Okay, so our next strategy is called the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is a given formula to us here. And the quadratic formula is mostly used when we can't factor, but it actually always works no matter what. So if it is factorable, the formula also works as well. But if I can factor, I do, because it's a little bit faster. Okay, but I do get some grade 12s who are like, forget it, I'm just using the formula no matter what question I'm doing. I'm not even factoring. Okay, so we're going to do a question where we do solve by factoring, and then I'm going to show you that the formula works. Okay, so can you factor this? It is a simple trinomial. Did you already recognize the style? Simple trinomial. So the simple trinomial goes like this. X times x for the first. What multiplies to 12? So I'm going to work with a 6 and a 2, and I need to get negative 4 out of it. Okay, so those are the solutions. Now, ready? We're going to do the formula. So let's talk about when we had this quadratic. What is the A value? What is the B value? What is the C value? Do you remember how do we get those? A is how many x squareds, do you see? So just 1, would that make sense? 1 x squared. B is how many x's, and C is how many numbers. So on your test, I'm going to trick you. I'm going to write that not in order to make sure you're understanding, right? Okay, so sometimes I don't write the x squared first, but you got to make sure that that's still your A no matter what. Okay, formula. X equals. So this formula says opposite of B. So if RB reads negative 4, I'm going to write a positive 4. Plus minus the square root of. Okay, so B squared. What do you get if you square this? Positive 16. Whatever you do, no matter what, that's positive. And I get people who type that into their calculator wrong. So please don't ever do negative 4 squared. Don't be working like that. I need you to be thinking negative 4 squared, okay? So do that. Most of the times you can do that in your head, not your calculator. But if you did it in your calculator, this is wrong. Always positive. So B squared, subtract 4 times the A1 number and the C number. All over 2 times the A number. Okay, so there's a 4, the bottom is 2, and then I'm going to use the square root symbol there, and then that's what we're going to figure out. So I need you to type me just this part, which is called, we're going to later learn, this is called the discriminant part. So just this part under there, that's called the discriminant. So get me, hey, what is the discriminant number? So type that into your calculator. and I got 64 out of that number. 16 subtract 4 times 1 times negative 12. 64? Okay. So now we're going to go to our answers. So one time you're going to go 4 plus the square root of 64 and divide by 2. And then one other time you're going to go 4 minus the square root of 64 divided by 2. Okay? There's something wrong with this right now, so don't type right away yet. What's going to happen to my calculator answer if I type like this? There's something wrong with it. Can you identify what it will come out to be wrong? Your calculator is going to do this division and then that separately. So how can I fix this scenario? I need to put on brackets. Does that make sense? Why? So that's one of the most common mistakes in using this formula. You have to have the top brackets divided by the bottom. Okay, so can you type these separately? And it looks like I know my answers because we factored this. So does it match? So can you type that? Can you type that? And what did we have on the other side? Did it match a 6 and a negative 2 from our factoring? Okay, but obviously the most important skill here is actually just how to type stuff. Can you type that in properly? Okay, ready to try some harder ones? So on this one, if I was probably in grade 12, I'd be like, well, does it factor? Well, negative 14 has nothing that would get me 6, right? This is what I would be doing. Negative 14, 114, 2, 7. There's no combo that can get me 6, right? I know that it doesn't factor then. It doesn't factor because there's nothing that would work. So I have to use the formula. Okay? So we can identify A with a 2, B is 6, and C is negative 7. Okay, X equals opposite of B, so this one had a 6, so I'm going to write negative 6 plus minus the square root of, so B squared, I'm actually going to write 36. I'm replacing it. Don't write me 6 squared, just replace it. 36. Subtract 4 bracket a 2 bracket negative 7. All over 2 times 2. So X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of something over 4. And then I would go into my calculator and I would say, well, what is this square root part? So that's the discriminant. So can you try to type that in to see? And see if we match, because my number was 92 on my type. Okay, so final answers, I'm going to be doing this in my calculator. Negative 6 plus the square root of 92 divided by 4. That's exactly how I would type it in. And everybody should be using those square root buttons. Okay, so the only thing that changes is this either add or subtract button. And then on your test, you're expected to go to 2 decimal places. So when you're writing this answer, can you go to 2 decimal places? Okay, I'm going to jump to number 3 here. Okay, so the third one, maybe you don't have to do this, but I'll write it out for you. I'm just identifying the A, the B, and the C. So X equals opposite of B, so this one had a positive 5, so I'm going to write a negative 5. Plus minus the square root of so I'm going to go b squared, which is 25, minus 4 bracket. Put a negative 3 and a 6 in those spots over 2 times negative 3. Okay, so there's a negative 5 in that spot. The bottom is now negative 6. And then the square root of, and then you work with your calculator. What's in there? Okay, can you practice your type? Your answers are at the actually, do you guys have your answers at the bottom of the page? Did you already peek? Those are your answers at the bottom. Okay, can you see if they match? Looks like a negative 0.81 and a 2.47 are supposed to be your answers.
Is there like a specific reason why we don't put like just the number squared?
Because I get lots of people who do this mistake. And so I just try to avoid it by just squaring it right away. Because I get this too much. Okay, so your calculator should look like this. That's what your calculator typing should look like, right? And then on the other typing, it should look like that. Does anybody know that if they have a brackety calculator? Do you know what I mean with that? So mine is not. So for instance, when I push, for me, when I push the square root symbol, it just does a square root symbol. So then I would just do 97, like that. Okay? But some people have brackety calculators. Does anybody have a calculator that once they hit the square root button, it opens up a bracket? Okay, so then those people, do you understand that you have to do a double bracket? If you have a brackety calculator, yours opened a bracket there, so now you got to actually do a double bracket. Okay, so understand your calculator on that side of things. Okay? On your test, I make you connect. What is this all about? So, if you're getting an answer, do you understand that these are the x-intercepts? So this is going to cross at negative -0.81, and it's going to cross at 2.47. Those are the x-intercepts. That's what this is about, right? X equals that. It's the root, it's the x-intercept, it's the 0, all those words. And what do we know about this parabola? Looking at the -3x squared, what do you know about this parabola? It opens down. So that's what's happening to this graph. So my applied people, who's in my applied class next semester? Anybody? You're going to take applied? Maybe? Okay, so what do my applied students get to do? They get to use this calculator and they get to type in -3x squared plus 5x plus 6. So they get to type that in and then graph it. Okay, so there's the upside down parabola, which we knew. Then they're going to go calculate the 0, and then they're going to tell the computer it's between there and there, and look at what the answer is for the x-intercept, -0.81. Okay, so that's what's happening graphically. Okay, question 2. You know what I wanted to do? I kind of wanted to change the question. Okay, this is probably something I would give you on a test. So, can you change that question? I should have tricked. This is how I'm tricking you on the test, by the way. Okay, so use the formula to solve this. If this is your question, you can't use the formula. Just like factoring, what do you have to do before you apply techniques? Get a 0. You have to get a 0. So you have to get a 0 before you do this technique, okay? So on your test, if I give you something like that, please make sure you move it over, 0 out one of the sides, and then go ahead. Okay, I'm going to leave you to do question 4. And the answers are at the bottom. Go ahead.